Hello and welcome all to a brand spanking new episode of the Royal Bride Godmother podcast. I'm Grace, your spiritual mentor and spiritual godmother. Welcome to all the kings and queens who are tuning in through the podcast on iTunes, on Spotify, wherever you're listening to. I welcome you. And I'm going to ask you to get comfortable because today we are going to explore some rather interesting little things that I think you might find as revealing as I did. And I'm excited to deliver it today. So, romance or by romance, queens, which would you like? Romance or by romance? Have any of you ever heard or read the phrase, "How Mr. Darcy ruined my love life"? How Heathcliff ruined my love life. How Heathcliff ruined my expectations of love. I find that a lot of women who are in their 30s will express themselves like this. How Eric the Phantom ruined my expectations of love. Oh, if he set the bar. Oh. So this comes from, I find, accepting, willingly or not, an idealistic expectation of a man and idealizing Mr. Darcy as the perfect man, idealizing Heathcliff somehow as the perfect man. Some women just love the tough love. Accepting an idealistic expectation of a man, of love, of relationships. Accepting the Byronic or the romantic hero as a framework, framing love through Romania or romantic mania, whether it's your preference is Byronic or it's the romantic type. As girls, and this begins at home, we are influenced by the whole Disney thing, Prince Charming. Those of us who grew up on Disney, we begin to frame love, men, the idea of love, of relationships through this archetype, through this heroic figure, through the films that they're portrayed in, through the romance novels, television shows. This is our framework when we have nothing else to learn from because we don't have our own experiences yet. Now, before digital media, young women got their dose of Byro or romantic through the pages of books, of the novels. Both heroic archetypes exist today. They're not dead. They're just in more color, more vibrant. They've appeared and reappeared in our digital age in color, in technicolor, vibrant, seductive, represented by, portrayed by some very good-looking, handsome actors. So their charisma is expanded on the screen, on film. They become more dramatic, more alluring, more attractive to us. Larger than life, you can say, especially that Byronic hero we love to hate, the bad boy. And I believe that this is mainly due to what that young girl is consuming through media. See, we all consume. We're all consumers. We live in consumerism and in a consumerist culture. So we do consume. Whether you're consuming your entertainment through Netflix, you're consuming your entertainment through books. If you love to read, whether you have consumed your entertainment through television shows, the TV series, whatever, we all consume. But I find that those three particular mediums, television, the screen, the big screen, the silver screen film, small screen television, and those novels, those pesky little novels, those Fabio covered novels, right? So whether we like it or not, this stuff does impact us. It does influence us. And if we start consuming it from a very early age, we start getting our framework somehow we start making up these fantasies. About love, about romance, about relationships and men. And I find that imposing and controlling men are often labeled as Byronic heroes or the anti-heroes. And I think that Byronic hero or Byronic is a euphemism, romanticizing the idea of an unstable and toxic man, as we will note in some of his characteristics. Because if there's someone who is more human, plainly more human than the romantic hero, but because of this, he also has more confusing characteristics than the romantic hero, it's that man right there, the Byronic hero. Now, that term originated with Lord Byron, famous 19th century English romantic poet. And the Byronic hero is an archetype. He's considered an extreme variation of the romantic hero archetype. Traditional romantic heroes, they tend to be defined by their rejection or questioning of social conventions, standard norms of behavior, their alienation from society, focusing on the self as center of existence, their ability to inspire others to commit acts of goodness and kindness. So I suppose there's more good in them than bad, but they're not idealized heroes because they're imperfect. They have flaws, and that does make them more realistic. And despite some of those unsavory personalities, they often do behave heroically. But the Byronic hero seems to have far more flaws than unsavory flaws than the romantic hero. And I just have to wonder, why are we attracted to this as we're reading the novel, as we're watching the film? So let's look at some of these characteristics. Obviously, he is an intelligent, clever, but ruthless and arrogant man. He's depressive, he's violent, he's self-conscious. He's emotionally, intellectually tortured. He's traumatized. He's highly emotional, as if I don't have enough with my own emotions, right, ladies? Manipulative. He's self-indulgent, spiritually doubtful. He's often reckless or suicidal. Oh. He's prone to angry outbursts. He's decidedly prone to substance abuse. He's dedicated to pursuing issues of justice over issues of legality. Prone to self-destructive impulses, project, seductive, and sexually attractive. Okay. Now, they also tend to be loyal only to themselves and their core beliefs and values. And although they often act in the name of greater good, they rarely admit to doing so. And you can already conjure up some of these guys in your head, but Heathcliff, Mr. Darcy, who is sometimes he's classified as a romantic hero. So I think it all depends on how you view Mr. Darcy. Personally, I do find him more Byronic. Mr. Darcy, Captain Ahab in Moby Dick, Frollo. We talked about Frollo, Judge Claude Frollo from The Hunchback of Notre Dame. He got the votes. Eric the Phantom, James Bond. So there were so many of them. There's plenty of them to go around. And then, of course, there's the more modernized, revamped Byronic hero like Edward Cullen, like the unsavory Mr. Grey. So many. Spike from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. You could also say that Angel in Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I think Max Evans from Roswell has a little bit of romantic and Byronic in him. So there's just so many of them, and they're everywhere. They're just everywhere. It's like Pokemon. And although the term Byronic hero was coined, I would say rather relatively still, recently, 19th century, the archetype has been with us for longer than that. We just didn't call him Byronic. He's been drilled into the female psyche willingly on her own, during her own recreational time, or through other means. When you go to school, they start teaching you the classics, and eventually you're going to run into the Byronic hero himself in the pages of Wuthering Heights, in the pages of Pride and Prejudice, in the pages of Frankenstein. The monster is also a Byronic hero. So if you don't get it willingly, it will be instilled into you in school, in books, and movies, and novels, and television shows. He's peculiarly attractive, alluring man because he's human. He's not perfect. He's more human than the romantic hero. But I found that even Byronic is an idealization. But directly or indirectly, we have been touched by his magic, reached by this archetype in one way or another. Now, I like how Lord Macaulay, critic and historian, described the Byronic hero as proud, morose, cynical man. Somebody please bring out the violin at this point. With defiance on his brow and misery in his heart, a despiser of his class, implacable in revenge. But, and this is where we queens get caught. This is where we get caught when we meet a real life Byronic type. But he's capable of deep and strong affection. Capable of deep and strong affection. That's the Byronic man for you. And he's not just in the pages of the novel or in the movies. He's also in cafes. He is at your workplace. He is at church. He is possibly even living in your home. You're sleeping with him in your bed. He's everywhere. This man is everywhere. And queens, life itself is difficult and complicated. Why would you want a difficult and complicated man? This man is attractive when you're an inexperienced little girl who views the world and romance through rose-tinted glasses, yet not too rose-tinted because you're romanticizing this guy whose characteristics we have just explored. So you're immature, you're a young girl with these fairy tale dreams, with high school fantasies. But when you become a woman and you know what it's like to experience the disillusion, the heartache, the manipulation, and the emotional abuse, the damage, no thank you. I was going to say it. No thank you, point blank, period. No thank you, Lord Byron. No, thank you. I have enough character flaws of my own. I don't need to find somebody specifically with so many character flaws already. Every human has flaws. You don't need to go searching for somebody whose list makes more flaws than qualities, than virtues. And we just saw him. He has more flaws than virtues. Now, he is an extreme. That's another thing. That's why he attracts us. And this is why he's unhealthy, just as the romantic hero is unhealthy. He's an extreme, idealized archetype. Nothing, if we've learned anything from narcissistic abuse or any kind of toxic abuse, nothing in the extreme is healthy. Moderation is always key. Let's go to the polar opposite of the Byronic, the romantic hero. Now, these guys are not the better side of the coin. The Byronic hero is simply an extreme variant of the romantic hero. And according to many literary critics and biographers, it was Lord Byron who got so bored with that romantic hero that he developed. He concocted the archetype of the Byronic hero in response to his boredom with traditional romantic heroic literary characters. He was sick of them. It was like when Northanger Abbey got written for the same reason, to, in a way, ridicule Jane Eyre. Now, Byron, according to critics and biographers, he wanted to introduce a little spice into the romantic archetype, into the heroic archetype. So he really injected some spice, but he injected some bipolar spice into this thing. So he made it more appealing to readers because it was more psychologically realistic. I think he created a Frankenstein. The Byronic hero is similar in many respects, though, to the figure of that traditional romantic hero. Both of them tend to rebel against the conventional modes of behavior, thought, and they have personalities that are not traditionally heroic, although, right, that they are called heroic. But Byronic heroes tend to have a greater degree, and this is the part also where we got to be careful, because who wants to deal with this? I don't. They have a greater degree of psychological and emotional complexity. I think I have enough emotional complexity in me. I don't need more of that compounded by my own, even if it's in my literature and entertainment. So, psychological and emotional complexity, then traditional romantic hero. So, where the romantic hero does have this, the Byronic hero is your 2.0 of this psychological and emotional complexity. Byronic heroes are characterized not only by their frontal rejection of traditional heroic virtues and values, very charming, but also by their remarkable intelligence and cunning, strong feelings of affection and hatred, impulsiveness, strong sensual desires, moodiness, cynicism, black humor, and morbid sensitivity. Check, please. Check, please. If you're out on a date with a guy like this, check, please. An extreme of one or the other, romantic or Byronic, I find is an unbalanced frame. It's simply, there is no healthy way to view these guys. This is an unbalanced frame. It just doesn't, if you're idealizing the Byronic hero himself, he is already an idealization, as is the romantic hero. And while we may enjoy that fantasy, we cannot deny that this archetype, it's because of his mystery, his allure, his complexity, his very characteristics. He is a powerful force on the female mind. So he's anything but boring. He's strident. Now, I know a lot of it depends on the framework on how you view these things, but I find that a more balanced type of hero is Nicholas Nickleby, and in Charles Dickens' novel Nicholas Nickleby. I don't think he gets enough popularity. I don't think he gets enough attention. And Nicholas is an orphan. He's the hero of the novel, and I like how Dickens described him. Dickens says, Nickleby is not always blameless or agreeable. He is not always intended to appear so. He is a young man of impetuous temperament and with little or no experience. And I saw no reason why such a hero should be taken out of his nature. I like that honesty by Dickens. And I compare it to what Emily Bronte expressed about her Heathcliff. She was practically saying, I don't think it was a good idea to unleash this guy onto the pages of the publishing world. So Nicholas is mainly devoted to his friends and family and fiercely defies those who would do any harm to his loved ones. So he is heroic, but he doesn't stand out as Byronic or romantic. I think there's more of a balance there. He is a human hero. He's more humanized. But and then there are films on Nicholas Nickleby, but he doesn't get the spotlight that these very toxic other men get, like Heathcliff, Mr. Darcy, who else? Edward Cullen, a more modernized version of a Heathcliff Darcy type. So Nickleby is not as popularized, and he wouldn't earn our attention. Let's face it. For some women, perhaps, but not. Let's look at the majority here in the demographic. He wouldn't earn our attention as easily as that catalog of brooding, bad boys, the Byronic heroes. Now, conversely, young women are also conditioned to desire the idea of the perfect man and the perfect relationship. And I call those also high school girl fantasies and delusions of what true love or relationships are. And when it comes time to experience love and relationships in today's world, particularly today, because we are no longer in the 19th century, we are not in the 20th century. I mean, times change. But I have often heard older and younger women say, so-and-so raised the standards for love and relationships in men, and so I was deeply disappointed when I found out that wasn't the case. I mean, something along those lines. I'm paraphrasing them. But they don't mean that the bad boy, the Byronic hero, raised their standards. They're talking about that romantic hero, the guy we love to love. That guy raised their standards. He's the gentleman. He's debonair. He's charming, suave, chivalrous. And on the other hand, I've heard women say that these Byronic modern types, Cullen and Gray, have ruined their idea and perception of all men, because these two particularly made everyone else's men seem boring in comparison. I mean, you had women complaining about their husbands or their boyfriends, comparing them to these fictional Byronic types, this so-called hero or anti-hero. So there, I do particularly remember that during the Twilight Saga when it came out, hearing that a lot. And some women wanted to return back to their abusers. They were in women's shelters, and when this whole saga came out, they wanted to return. A lot of them actually wanted to return, and probably did return to their abusers. So there is an inherent danger in allowing ourselves to idealize one extreme or the other, to allow ourselves to be influenced by this idea of what a man should be, whether he's bad boy or good boy, devil or saint. Because let's face it, just like there is that Madonna whore complex, the bad boy and the good boy could also be taken as a as a very similar as something very similar to the Madonna whore complex. And I don't agree with either. So we shouldn't be framing our idea of love and relationships, especially not men, through either one of them. Not idolizing or idealizing or praising the bad boy or the good guy, because personally, I don't believe there's such a thing as a purely bad boy or a purely good boy. I mean, unless we're talking about narcissists, that's a whole different kettle of crawdads. But right here with purely bad boy or purely good boy, that's also going to an extreme of saying that a bad boy is purely bad and a good boy is purely good. I think good guys have some bad in them, and bad guys have some good in them, because in the end, they are flawed. They have virtues because they are human beings. And I like that example of Nicholas Nickleby. He's a noble soul, but because of his youth and his inexperience and his naivete, he's impetuous. He loses his temper. There's this one particular scene in the novel where you see him lose his temper and somebody gets really hurt. But it's also an act of nobility, a heroic act. And you would have to read the novel or watch the film to see what I'm talking about. But this is where we have to use wise discernment as serpents and caution as women when choosing a romantic partner. My queens, don't fall in love with a man's potential. I think we've been there with the narcissist. Do not fall in love with a man's potential. When a man shows you who he is, believe him the first time. Don't fall in love with a man's potential. And do not, remember what Isabella did in Wuthering Heights, do not attribute fantastical qualities to the bad boy, those non-existent fantastical qualities that deep down, he is a noble soul. Deep down, he is an honorable soul. Isabella told Catherine in Wuthering Heights, he's an honorable soul. And what did Catherine say? He's a wolfish man. You have no idea what you're talking about, girl. I grew up with this guy. The Byronic hero will carry more death, yes. But in part, I think we fall in love with the idea of the Byronic bad boy because, especially during our teens, we are angsty. Boys and girls, we are angsty. I mean, I remember being angsty, emo. And not all the girls are angsty, but we get pretty emo. We get pretty emo when we're young and we're still in that transition from being children to becoming adults. It's an emotional roller coaster. And that Byronic guy, we can identify with him. He's not perfect. The danger, however, is using him as the frame, as the standard. We see ourselves in his reflection. And that's what makes him so appealing. In him, we find characteristics of our own. And that's where the truth stings. So, Queen, Start elevating your way of thinking. Because in elevating your way of thinking, you will elevate your expectations and your standards of for a man. And the characteristics and qualities that you cultivate and that you value, you will look for in your romantic partner. We seek and attract what we are, queens. And we gravitate to who we are, to what we are. That is the cruel and hard truth. But once upon a time, a hero, not a Byronic hero, not a romantic hero, not even nothing in between, but the perfect man, he said these words, golden words, take them with you. The truth shall make you free. The truth shall make you free. This concludes the second part of our talk of that bad boy. Thank you so much for all your time, your effort in listening, your attention, and for coming on this joyride roller coaster with me, because isn't that Byronic guy a roller coaster? So stay tuned for the third part. We're going to continue discussing this man and a few other goodies that we're going to talk about. In the meantime, there's a lot to buy and reflect on and chew on, because once we discover why we attract certain people into our lives, why we gravitate towards certain characters. Even, I mean, it's so easy. It's not even complicated when you really see it from this point of view, is that we seek what we are. So if you're feeding your mind with good things, if you are growing in your spirituality, you will seek things of light, of salt, of goodness. You will not gravitate towards darkness. You seek the darkness when there's darkness in you, when the darkness dominates you. And I recall being one of those, not a vampire freak, but I remember gravitating towards certain vampires and certain dark authors, and of the authors who wrote for the Dark Kingdom. And now I understand why I listen to a lot of dark music, very depressing lyrics, because there was darkness in me. And of course, there's light in you, but when you are feeding your spirit with dark things to feed your own darkness, then the result is you're going to continue gravitating towards the darkness, and you're going to continue seeking that darkness. And that darkness, queens, will find you. And for my kings too, this applies too for the kings listening. And thank you for listening, kings. I appreciate your ear. And this is stuff that you can teach if you have daughters, if you have princesses, you can teach this to your daughters. Do not seek this kind of man. And I think it starts at home. That is where that's the lab. And also what we are consuming. I remember watching a commercial many years ago, and it said that we are in our living rooms are the like the factories or the laboratories where we are being programmed through what we consume on that small screen, on your phone, what you're watching, on your laptop, on your tablet. I think we have to begin accepting that a lot of this is because we have allowed it. A lot of this has permeated us because we allow this. We mindlessly allow these things to enter into our lives. And this is why I think we need to be more mindful of our entertainment, even if it's for whatever purpose, for whatever it is that you invest your time in recreationally. It does affect you. It affects your subconscious. The more you consume it, the more you repeat it, the more you watch it, the more you listen to it, the more it becomes like a broken record in your subconscious. And if you're consuming darkness, that broken record, that's why a lot of you are walking around with broken spirits, because you've been consuming too much darkness. And this darkness affects your soul, point blank, period. And so to finalize, that Byronic hero, he's dark. He may be alluring in so many ways, but like an angel of light, he is dark and he is complicated and he is traumatized, and he can only traumatize you even more. And I give glory to God for this revelation and this wisdom and this truth. I thank you all so very much for listening. I'm Grace, your spiritual godmother. I'll speak to you very soon, and I love you all. Shalom. Salah.